Amelia Earhart is on one of the final legs of her historic flight around the world when something goes terribly wrong.
Number 30. Jayme Closs. In the early hours of October 15, 2018, police responded to a 911 call at the home of James and Denise Closs in Barron, Wisconsin. Inside, they discovered a horrible scene. The couple had been murdered, and their teenage daughter Jayme was missing.
Each day I wake up with a new, refreshed hope. Today is going to be the day.
I can still feel she's going to come home. My heart tells me, yep, and I won't give that up.
For 88 agonizing days, authorities searched for Jayme, but were unable to come up with any leads. Then, on January 10, 2019, Jayme mysteriously turned up in the woods, where she encountered a local woman who took her to a neighbor's house. Investigators later learned that Jake Thomas Patterson had killed her parents that night and abducted her for his own sexual gratification. Patterson was arrested that same day and sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms plus 40 additional years.
Patterson was given 2 life sentences without parole for the murders, the maximum 40 years for Jayme's kidnapping, the judge calling him the embodiment of evil.
Number 29. Monica and Michael Bennett. The last time anyone saw half-siblings Monica and Michael Bennett was on June 21, 1989 in Brunswick, Georgia. The two shared a mother but had different fathers. On the day they vanished, Michael's father Robert picked them up, reportedly to help him pack for his move to Alabama. That was the last anyone saw of them. When questioned, Robert gave conflicting accounts, claiming at one point that they ran away from his apartment, and at another that he dropped them off at their mother's house. Despite these discrepancies, police classified the siblings as runaways and failed to carry out a thorough investigation. It wasn't until the 2000s that they were reclassified as endangered missing and added to the government's missing person database. Number 28. Johnny Gosch. On September 5, 1982, Johnny Gosch, a paperboy in West Des Moines, Iowa, disappeared during his morning paper route.
At first, West Des Moines police treated the disappearance as an abduction and launched a big search that included several law enforcement agencies.
Multiple witnesses reported seeing him speak with a mysterious man in a blue car shortly before he vanished, while another claimed they saw a silver car speeding away near the spot where Gosch's paper wagon was left. The case has since gained widespread publicity, but authorities have made no headway in determining who took Gosch or what became of him. In 1997, his mother Noreen alleged that Gosch visited her briefly with an unidentified man, but left without revealing where he was going.
West Des Moines police officers said that Noreen had told similar stories before, only to recant them later. There were never any witnesses that verified her claim.
The validity of this claim remains in doubt, and despite other unconfirmed sightings, Gosch is still officially missing. Number 27. Amy Lynn Bradley. In 1998, Amy Lynn Bradley had just graduated from college and was preparing to start a new job when she joined her family on a celebratory Caribbean cruise to Curacao. At around 6 a.m. on March 24th, Bradley's father discovered she was missing from the balcony where she had fallen asleep.
But Amy is not on deck. All of her belongings are still in the room. Yet after searching the ship for more than an hour, Amy is nowhere to be found.
All efforts to find her on the cruise ship proved futile, as the crew delayed announcing her disappearance until after most passengers had disembarked. Over the years, various theories have emerged, including that she was abducted and trafficked, fell overboard and drowned, or that she deliberately ended her own life. There have also been possible sightings of Bradley in Curacao, but none have led to her being reunited with her family.
We just can't give up looking. We just got to do what we have to do. As long as it takes.
Number 26. Ronald Tammen. Ronald Tammen, a 19-year-old sophomore at Miami University in Ohio, vanished mysteriously on the night of April 19, 1953.
Walked out of his dorm room around, I think, 8 p.m. and was never seen again.
An open textbook. The radio was still playing. All of his personal effects, including his wallet and car keys, were still in the room.
The last person who saw him was his residence hall manager, who gave him new bed sheets around 8 p.m. after someone placed a fish in his bed as a prank. By 10:30 p.m., when his roommate returned, Tammen was gone, leaving behind his coat, wallet, and car keys. Although his roommate reported the disappearance the next day, school authorities delayed taking action for several days. One woman in a nearby town claimed that on that night, a disoriented, dirty man resembling Tammen knocked on her door asking for directions.
She didn't alert police until she saw Tammen's picture in a local newspaper and the story about his disappearance.
This, alongside other reported sightings, still has not helped authorities figure out what happened to Ronald Tammen. Number 25, Tara Calico. On June 15, 1989, a woman found a Polaroid photograph at a Florida convenience store.
The nationwide frenzy brings a second family into the spotlight.
The mothers of Mike and Tara were strangers only a week ago. Now they're brought together in a common cause, a national effort to find their missing children.
The picture showed a young woman and a boy, both bound and gagged, seemingly in the back of a van. Many believed the woman to be Tara Calico, who had vanished nearly 1 year earlier during her routine bike ride near her home in Belen, New Mexico. Neither she nor her bike were found, and authorities only recovered pieces of her Sony Walkman and a cassette tape along the trail. While Scotland Yard identified the woman in the picture as Calico, an FBI analysis proved inconclusive. Her whereabouts remain a mystery, but in 2023, the Valencia County Sheriff's Office announced new leads in the case.
Right now, a team is working to go through 3 decades worth of police files. In order to sign off on charges, they have to rule out the laundry list of suspects who were named over the years. There's no hard timeline on when or if charges will be filed.
Number 24, Timmothy Pitzen. On May 11, 2011, James Pitzen dropped his son Timothy off at school, but when he returned later that day, he discovered the boy was missing.
I pulled up and I got out. His teacher goes, "What are you doing here, Mr. Pitzen?" I'm like, "Here to pick Timothy up." "Oh, he left 8:15 this morning."
Shortly after 8 a.m., Timothy's mother, Amy Fry Pitzen, had picked him up and taken him on a trip to amusement parks, resorts, and zoos. He was last seen 2 days later on security footage. On May 14th, Fry Pitzen's body was discovered in a motel room. She had taken her own life and left a note stating that Timothy was safe but would never be found. True to those words, no trace of him has ever emerged. In 2019, hope briefly resurfaced when a teenager in Kentucky claimed to be Timothy, but sadly, that turned out to be a hoax.
What did the false hope he created do to you?
It destroyed me for a week or two. Very unhappy. Very destructive.
Number 23, Brian Shaffer. Ohio State University medical student Brian Shaffer went out with friends to celebrate the start of spring break in 2006. As the night progressed, Shaffer got separated from the group, and his friends assumed he had gone home without telling them.
The following day, his girlfriend was getting concerned because she was unable to reach Brian.
But when he failed to show up in the subsequent days and missed a long-planned flight, he was reported missing. Security footage from the bar's entrance captured Shaffer briefly interacting with 2 ladies, but showed no evidence of him leaving. The only other way out was through a construction zone, which would have been difficult for him to navigate, especially if he was intoxicated. This puzzling series of events has raised several questions about Shaffer's fate that authorities have not been able to answer.
The people closest to Brian still hope that one day they'll learn the truth.
Number 22, Asha Degree. After putting their daughter Asha to bed on February 13, 2000, Harold and Aquila Degree woke up the next morning to find her missing.
Investigators at the time had reason to believe that she took some items with her out of the house and that she left the house and walked south on Highway 18 toward the city of Shelby.
There were no signs of forced entry, and Asha's brother O'Brien was asleep in his own bed. Strangely, it seemed she had packed a bag and simply walked out of the house. Around 4 a.m., several motorists spotted her walking along a highway alone, and when one approached her, she fled into the woods, never to be seen again. Months later, Asha's bag was found at a construction site, containing items that didn't belong to her. For years, the case yielded no significant leads, until September 2024, when authorities classified her disappearance as a homicide and named 2 suspects.
It's important here we know that no one has been charged. Investigators took DNA from Roy and Connie Deadman. They also took a green car and several other items, including a camera, computers, and phones.
Number 21, the Beaumont children. It remains one of the most chilling mysteries in Australian history. On January 26, 1966, 3 siblings, Jane, Arna, and Grant Beaumont, left their home in Adelaide to visit the nearby Glenelg Beach alone.
Nancy Beaumont thought her 3 children would be home by 1 o'clock. Increasingly panicked, she waited as bus after bus returned from the beach without them.
Witnesses reported seeing them playing with a tall, thin, suntanned man, and later walking away with him. When the children failed to return home that afternoon, their alarmed parents contacted the authorities. But despite extensive searches in and around the beach, no trace of the kids was ever found. Over the decades, there have been countless suspects and theories surrounding their disappearance, but none have led to any concrete answers. Sadly, both parents passed away without ever knowing the fate of their 3 children.
You know, the family have suffered considerably for a long, long time without any answers.
Number 20, Ryan Chambers.
This is a picture of Ryan Chambers, missing from Rishikesh, India, since August 2005.
In June of 2005, Ryan Chambers embarked on a spiritual journey to India with his friend John Booker. However, after a while, Booker noticed that Chambers wasn't getting much sleep and was beginning to act strangely. Then, in the early morning of August 24th, the 21-year-old Australian simply walked out of his ashram wearing nothing but a pair of shorts. He left behind all his belongings and an eerie note reading, quote, "If I'm gone, don't worry, I'm not dead. I'm freeing minds, but first I have to free my own." No one has seen or heard from him since. An exhaustive search was launched, but after turning up nothing for years, Chambers was legally declared dead in 2023. Number 19, the Fort Worth Missing Trio. Rachel Trelisa, Renee Wilson, and Julianne Mosley were Christmas shopping in the Fort Worth, Texas Seminary South Shopping Center when they went missing. The girls failed to return to their respective homes, prompting their families to conduct a search.
There's something's happened to them. I know it.
They found Trelisa's car in the parking lot, and it contained multiple gifts, indicating that the girls had returned to the vehicle at some point. Nevertheless, the trio was nowhere to be seen. Trelisa's husband later received a letter presumably written by her, stating that they were, quote, going to Houston to, quote, get away, and they'd be back in about a week. But they never showed up, and have remained missing ever since. The families have since cast doubt on the letter's authenticity.
My goal is I would love closure before my mother dies.
Because just like in 1974...
You haven't given up hope, though.
No, huh?
Number 18, Brandon Swanson. On May 14, 2008, Brandon Swanson of Minnesota was driving home following a night out partying. After veering off into a ditch, the 19-year-old student phoned his parents and asked them to pick him up. Swanson's parents remained on the phone with him for the next 47 minutes, but couldn't seem to find him at his supposed location.
He said he was fine, that he was not injured, and, in fact, when we did find his vehicle, there was no damage to it.
Still on the call, Swanson asked his dad to meet him at a local bar, but soon after, he yelled out a curse word and went silent. Investigators later found that the young man was actually about 25 miles away from where he thought he was. It's believed he inadvertently fell into the Yellow Medicine River and drowned, hence the sudden cursing. Number 17, Bobby Dunbar. The story of Bobby Dunbar is a bizarre one.
Speculation was that he was taken. They assumed he was kidnapped.
Bobby disappeared on a family fishing trip on August 23, 1912. Authorities then found a boy matching his description with a man named William Walters. Walters insisted that the kid was actually named Bruce Anderson, which was corroborated by Anderson's mother, Julia, who claimed that she allowed her son to go on a trip with him. The case went to trial, and Anderson was eventually handed to the Dunbars, with whom he lived the rest of his life. Unable to afford a lawyer, Julia lost her case and had her reputation soiled in the media. However, a future DNA test proved that the kid was, in fact, not Dunbar, lending further credence to Julia's story. Number 16, Margaret Fox. In 1974, Margaret Fox advertised her services as a babysitter, attracting the attention of one John Marshall. Marshall contacted Fox and told her to meet him in Mount Holly, New Jersey. The young girl traveled there on a bus and was never seen again. The authorities were immediately contacted and they traced Marshall's number to a supermarket payphone, which raised suspicions. The Fox family also received a phone call from a stranger, demanding $10,000 for their daughter's safe return. Unfortunately, this call could never be traced, and the man was never identified. Despite investigators' efforts, the case eventually fizzled out, with no one finding Fox or figuring out the identity of Marshall ever since.
There's a likelihood that Margaret may be deceased. It is our mission that if this is the case, Margaret receives a proper burial.
Number 15, George Mallory and Andrew Irvine. The story of George Mallory and Andrew Irvine captures the horror of mountain climbing and the endless allure of Everest. Both men took part in the ill-fated British Mount Everest expedition of 1924, hoping to be the first people to reach the top. They were last spotted about 800 feet from the summit, but promptly disappeared. The men were soon presumed dead and publicly mourned as heroes of Britain. Their whereabouts remained a mystery for the next 75 years, until the Mallory and Irvine research expedition located Mallory's preserved corpse in 1999.
I heard out of my radio, which was in my down suit, I just heard hobnail boot. Quickly unzipped it and said, "What?"
It was found with a puncture wound in the forehead, suggesting that he had fallen and accidentally struck himself with his ice axe.
This guy was a really talented climber. It took a great degree of skill and confidence to go with that limited amount of gear to that distance.
It wasn't until 2024 that partial remains of Irvine's body were found. Number 14, Marjorie West. Called the Great Unsolved Mystery of the Missing by The Guardian, the story of Marjorie West is a fascinating one. West was picnicking with her family on May 8, 1938 when she went missing. The story goes that West's sister Dorothea left her unattended to, but upon her return, the child was gone. A massive search was undertaken involving thousands of people, but the effort was unsuccessful. Then Police Commissioner P.W. Foote believed that West had been playing hide-and-seek when she got lost. However, a man named Harold Beck later wrote a book positing that West was kidnapped and grew up with her captors as Sylvia London. Beck claimed that London eventually confessed to being West, but she passed away in 2009. Number 13, Frederick Valentich. Australian pilot Frederick Valentich was a student in the country's Air Training Corps. In the evening of October 21, 1978, Valentich was flying over Bass Strait, which separates mainland Australia from Tasmania. During the flight, Valentich contacted Melbourne Flight Service to report an unidentified aircraft that was following him.
Delta Sierra Juliet, there seems to be a large aircraft below 5,000.
The craft had bright lights and seemed to be hovering right above him. Just after telling Flight Service that it wasn't an aircraft, a loud scraping noise was heard over the radio. Valentich was lost, and his plane was never recovered.
Flying a single-engine aeroplane over water, lost communication in such strange circumstances, I put an alert phase on the aeroplane.
Ufologists believe that the pilot was abducted by a UFO, while others posit that he was unknowingly flying upside down and saw his own reflection in the water before crashing. Number 12, Evelyn Hartley. Teenager Evelyn Hartley was tasked with babysitting the daughter of Viggo Rasmussen, one of her parents' colleagues. Hartley arrived at the house as planned, but when she failed to check in later that evening, her father Richard gave her a call. There was no response, so he traveled to the Rasmussen house himself. He found a wild sight, as items were thrown everywhere and the furniture had been moved. There were also signs of a break-in, including a torn-off window screen, pry marks, footprints, and blood. The baby was found unharmed upstairs, but there was no sign of Hartley. A witness reported seeing two men driving away with a young girl, adding credence to the theory that Hartley was kidnapped in a break-in. Number 11, He Jiankui.
In November 2018, this Chinese biophysicist made world headlines when he announced he'd created the first genetically edited human babies.
I understand my work will be controversial, but I believe family need this technology.
His claim was met with widespread condemnation due to serious ethical issues with his experiment. His research was suspended, he was fired from SUSTech, and then he disappeared.
He was last seen at the Human Genome Editing Conference in Hong Kong on Wednesday. The South China Morning Post reports that the researcher's employer is dismissing claims he was detained.
In December, it was reported that he was sequestered in an apartment under guard. 1 year later, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison. He was released in April 2022 and is now working on gene therapy for rare genetic diseases.
It's game over for He Jiankui, who thought he could tweak life and get away with it.
Number 10, the Sodders. A devastating fire erupted in the Sodder household on Christmas Eve 1945. The Sodder parents and 4 of their 9 children escaped, but the other 5 weren't so lucky. The easy theory is that the children died in the fire, but the story contains many twists that cast some doubt. No evidence of the bodies was ever found. Furthermore, patriarch George Sodder spoke negatively about his then-fascist native Italy, prompting a theory that the Sicilian mafia had burned the house and kidnapped the children. Years later, a photo of an older man was mailed to the Sodders, purportedly depicting a now-grown Louis. They agreed that the man harbored a resemblance to their missing child, and they both held on to this hope until their deaths. Number 9. Lauren Spearer.
In 2011, 20-year-old Lauren Spearer was attending Indiana University and studying textiles merchandising. On the night of June 2, 2011, Spearer went out with some friends to Bloomington's Kilroy Sports Bar. She left the bar around 2:30 a.m. and was last seen leaving a friend's apartment at 4:30. She remains missing to this day.
The latest images come from a security camera, according to the authorities. Here's one of them, which police say shows Lauren just hours before she disappeared.
Various theories have been put forth, including abduction and a fatal overdose, as Spearer had reportedly consumed alcohol and drugs.
One theory is that Lauren was kidnapped by a biker gang after collapsing in the street on the way to her apartment.
Despite thousands of tips and attempts by police to tie her disappearance to other crimes in the area, Lauren Spearer's whereabouts remain unknown.
I really just would like to hear this is where you can find your daughter. It's the not knowing what happened to her, where she might be, or, it's unbearable.
Number 8. Lars Mittank.
One of the strangest and creepiest stories involving a disappearance has to be that of 28-year-old German man Lars Mittank. In June 2014, Mittank was vacationing at Bulgaria's Golden Sands seaside resort with friends. When it was time to leave, Mittank was left in the country owing to a ruptured eardrum, which prevented him from flying. He checked into the Hotel Color Varna by himself, where he reportedly began to act paranoid. He even called his mother and told her that 4 men were looking to get rid of him. The last time anyone saw Mittank, he was running through Varna Airport in fear, hopping a fence and fleeing into the nearby woods. He hasn't been seen since. The source of his fear and his current whereabouts remain unknown.
Number 7. Maura Murray.
On February 9, 2004, Murray, a nursing student at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, emailed her professors claiming there'd been a death in the family.
It is a real mystery. 1 minute she's here, 1 minute she's not, and there's just so many theories.
Her parents have since stated that no such death occurred. She looked into hotels in Vermont, loaded her car with clothing and toiletries, and packed up her belongings in boxes. After leaving campus, she purchased alcohol and withdrew $280 from an ATM. Murray crashed her car around 7 p.m. that night, and when police arrived at 7:45, she was nowhere to be found.
There was no injury, so they searched on foot and in vehicles. Basically what they were looking for was a person walking or B footprints in the snow. They found none.
The responding officer found a few suspect items in the car, including driving directions to Vermont and blank accident report forms. Of Murray herself, there was and has been no trace.
All I have left is the public, because I'm not getting any help anywhere else. I'm asking for help for my daughter.
Number 6. The Springfield Three.
This missing persons case, in which Cheryl Levitt, Stacy McCall, and Susie Streeter all disappeared, has remained unsolved since 1992. The story begins at Levitt's home in Springfield, Missouri, where the women spent the night after attending high school graduation parties.
The girls leave the party just after 2 a.m. Cops believe Stacy and Susie walked through the front door of Cheryl's house on Delmar Street about 15 minutes later. That's where the mystery begins.
When a friend arrived at the house the next morning, all 3 were missing, despite their cars being parked outside.
Authorities say there was no sign of a struggle. In fact, the front door was unlocked, the TV was on, their clothes were still there, their purses and personal items untouched.
The friend found a broken porch light, and she reportedly received an obscene phone call while there. Levitt's dog was also visibly agitated. When McCall's mother later arrived to investigate, she found a, quote, strange message on the answering machine. But this was accidentally deleted.
It was a brief call, and the person didn't identify themselves. It was a male voice that made sexual innuendos, and she hung up, and immediately received a second call with also making sexual overtones.
Unfortunately, the crime scene was so badly contaminated that it prevented a proper investigation.
But until then, these families will continue to live one day at a time, hoping for the best, but knowing the worst could be just around the corner.
Number 5. Rebecca Coriam.
When this 24-year-old British woman disappeared the morning of March 21, 2011, she was working for the Disney Wonder cruise ship.
The ship set sail from Los Angeles on Sunday, March the 22nd for the Mexican Riviera. The alarm was raised last Tuesday when she failed to turn up for her shift. The following day, the vessel docked in Puerto Vallarta, and the Mexican Navy and US Coast Guard were deployed to search the seas.
Coriam was last seen on CCTV footage talking to someone on one of the ship's internal phones at 5:45 a.m. She was clad in extra-large clothing and appeared visibly distressed by the call. She hung up, walked away, and was never seen again. Investigators believe that Coriam went overboard, but how she went overboard remains a mystery. Some believe she jumped. Others believe she was pushed by a rogue wave, and her parents believe she was thrown into the ocean.
Very, very little information comes back to us as to what the investigations found out. And that's the frustrating side that we face, really, and that's partially because of the problems of where the ship was registered.
The official investigation has received loads of criticism, and Disney Wonder has even been accused of covering up her disappearance.
Just don't know what happened to her, do we? That's the worst.
Number 4, Zeb Quinn.
It's a loss without closure, with plenty of clues, but no resolution.
On January 2nd, 2000, 18-year-old Zeb Quinn met up with his friend Robert Owens. After Quinn received a notification on his pager, however, he appeared frantic and allegedly sped away in his car. 2 days later, after being treated at the hospital for injuries, Owens called in sick for Quinn.
It's very complex, as you've reported on. Mr. Owens was a person of interest in the Quinn disappearance from 2000, and those kind of things do make the case, it does make the case much more complicated.
On January 6th, Quinn's car was found abandoned with bizarre lipstick drawings on the back windshield and a live puppy stuck inside.
His mother has some hope he could have been kidnapped and is still alive.
In July 2017, Owens was charged with first-degree murder in the death of Quinn, but ultimately pleaded guilty to accessory after the fact.
He is also serving life in prison for ending the lives of the Food Network's Christy Schoen and her husband J.T. Codd in 2015.
We're able to bring Jason Owens to justice. He's removed from society. He's going to die in the custody of the state of North Carolina.
As for Quinn, his remains still haven't been found. Number 3, Harold Holt.
In December 1967, Harold Holt was serving as the 17th Prime Minister of Australia. Holt was an avid outdoorsman but nearly 60 years old, and his personal doctor had recently advised him against swimming. On the afternoon of December 17, 1967, Holt went for a swim at Australia's Cheviot Beach, despite rough waters. He was quickly swept out to sea, and a massive search was undertaken in the area.
Rescuers trundled their way to the search scene from surrounding communities. Police and military divers deployed to Cheviot Beach by helicopter. Crowds silently lined the roadway.
Despite the country's best efforts, no one was able to find any trace of Holt. A governmental inquiry was never launched owing to the wishes of Holt's family. This detail, among other factors, has led to numerous conspiracy theories.
In Washington, where Secret Service men keep the president under strict surveillance, there was surprise that a prime minister could be allowed to swim without being closely watched.
Despite countless claims to the contrary, the official ruling stands that Holt died in a tragic drowning.
He had been claimed by the sea he knew and loved.
Number 2, D.B. Cooper.
The story of D.B. Cooper is one of the most famous unsolved mysteries of all time. A story involving air theft, a cinematic escape, and an ambiguous outcome.
The identity of D.B. Cooper has been a mystery since November 24, 1971, when a man calling himself Dan Cooper hijacked and threatened to blow up a passenger jet flying from Portland to Seattle.
Cooper is the pseudonym of a man who hijacked a Boeing 727 in 1971 and extorted $200,000 in ransom. After securing the money, Cooper opened the door mid-flight and jumped out into the cold, dark night, never to be seen again.
Police believe he left the 727 in the flatlands of Oregon or Washington, but they are still looking in 4 states, even around the airport.
The only trace of Cooper remains a small cache of ransom bills that was recovered in 1980.
The portion of ransom money a family discovered buried in sand while camping along a sandbar, Tina Bar, in the Columbia River in 1980.
The rest of the money and DB himself remain missing. Many FBI agents claim that Cooper likely died in the jump, but then again, they could just be trying to save face.
While probability now points to D.B. Cooper's death, without hard evidence, many people today still believe that he survived.
Number 1, Amelia Earhart.
If there's one unsolved story more popular than that of D.B. Cooper, it's that of Amelia Earhart. Earhart was a popular and renowned aviator and the first woman to fly solo over the Atlantic.
The magnificent thing about Amelia is that in the eyes of the world, she never died. Her fear never witnessed, her failure never recorded.
In 1937, she and navigator Fred Noonan attempted to circumnavigate the globe. However, they disappeared over the Pacific near Hawaii and were never heard from again.
This grainy film records the last time Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan are ever seen alive.
Countless theories have been put forth regarding their ultimate fate, but no consensus has ever been made.
Not a trace of wreckage was found floating. There was no mayday call. There was no distress call.
For 70 years, investigators have been trying to solve the Earhart enigma.
It's most likely that Earhart and Noonan ran out of fuel and crashed into the Pacific while desperately looking for Howland Island. It's a boring answer, but the most realistic often are.
Which of these disappearance cases would you most like to see solved in the near future? Let us know in the comments below. Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.